What up, y'all? Mrs. Zoo Nation, aka Savage Armor Jim Giraffe. Welcome to another episode of the Megacolony Trap House podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about, in my personal opinion, the state of Cardfight Vanguard. I wanted to do this review for a couple of reasons, but before I get to the reasons, let me explain how I'm going to actually do this. So basically the way I'm going to do this is we're going to be looking at all three formats: overdress, V premium, and premium format. I'm going to tell, in my personal opinion, the pros and the cons of each format, and basically at the end of all of it, we're going to see if it's possible to fix all of the cons of all three formats, and if there's a solution to all three formats. I also have to apologize in advance, as there was supposed to be a follow-up video. This is technically supposed to be a follow-up video to not only requests I should have done like a few months ago, but also to like my last podcast topic, the last topic of the last podcast I did, which was about the Vanguard simulator issue. But I'll put that in a separate video tomorrow, as I don't really have too much time to do anything at the moment. So with all that being said, let me explain why I actually decided to do this video. So, months ago, one of my friends actually sent me this video that was made by Maniac's channel. He basically does like a lot of card fight, he does like a lot of card based like games and whatnot, and dub playthroughs and all this other stuff. And he basically made a video explaining why you should play Cardfight Vanguard, which was a very interesting take on the video, because there was even a few things that I never even considered when looking at the card game itself. Basically, he explained the differences of a lot of the card games and why Vanguard differentiates from every other card game. I will leave a link in the description to the video, so after you're done watching this, you can take a look at that video and kind of see where a little bit of the inspiration of this video is going. But you also got to remember that this video was made back in August of 2021. And let's be real, that video is almost a year old. And seeing that we have started the reboot a little over a year ago, I thought it would have been best to actually, and I'm kind of glad that I waited, I think it would have been best to actually look at how Vanguard as a whole changed within the last year, and see if this reboot was really worth it, because there are some people who believe that we should have never gotten a second reboot, and there's some people who believe that the ban list that we got in October 2021 was literally like the whole point of, yeah, we should have never really gotten a reboot in the first place, we didn't really need one in general, and all this other stuff. So all that being said, let's get all of this started, starting out with overdress format. Alright, so the pros of overdress format is pretty simple. It's very beginner friendly. I feel like that's basically one of the best things about overdress, is how beginner friendly the game is. Now the reason being is because like, if there's anything that is the most difficult about picking up a new card game, is the learning curve. I don't think that Vanguard has a deep enough learning curve in order to, really be complicated with everything else. Like, I mean, we had like let's say Yu-Gi-Oh! And Magic the Gathering. Like, those card games are very hard learning curves. But Vanguard doesn't really have too much of a learning curve, and we'll definitely get back to this topic in a minute, as it does technically consider partially a con as well. But honestly, would have to say, for anybody who is trying to get back into the game of Vanguard, or has or is thinking about getting into the game of Vanguard, overdress is basically the format to go into. I also feel like that another interesting thing about overdress is the ride lines. Now, me personally, I have a slight issue with the ride lines, But when it comes to deck construction, which I'm gonna be real with you, is always the hardest part of playing card games sometimes. If the right lines makes deck construction very easy, which is something that I do like about it. It also fixes the issue of the G assisting, which I'm gonna be real with you is basically the issue I have with the right lines. While yes, it does kind of feel good to not being able to G assist, I kind of feel like that was also kind of part of the game. Like a thing that's part of card games in general. There's always going to be a time where you're always going to be breaking cards, no matter how consistent your deck is, no matter how much synergy you put in your deck, no matter how many search cards you put in your deck. There's just going to be that time, or those times where you actually get screwed over because you drew a bad hand. A prime example of how I looked at G assisting was like kind of sort of how I looked at Magic the Gathering when it came to getting mana screwed and mana flooded. Now, for those who don't really play Magic, of course everything goes based on like how many land cards you have on the field and in your hand and whatnot. And getting mana flooded is when you have too many lands, and getting mana screwed is when you have too little lands. So it basically hinders how you play it. And the reason why I kind of excuse the whole G assist thing is because just like getting mana flooded and getting mana screwed, when you win that game, the victory is 10 times better because you started at a disadvantage. You started at like a disadvantage where your opponent had the advantage and you still came up with a win. That's basically like the equivalent of like being at the near brink of death, like in a shooting game or whatnot, and you get a triple kill out of it. It's all like you should have been dead off of one bullet, but instead you took down 3 people out of nowhere. That's how it kind of feels like when you have the G assist but you win the game. That's how it feels like when you get mana flooded or mana screwed but you still win the game. That's why I kind of excuse it from time to time, because despite that it's like a thing that that discourages you from like winning or something like that, and it puts you like at a disadvantage and you're way behind already, getting that win is 10 times better. So that's why I was all like, I'm 50-50 with the ride line thing, but when you look at it from a deck construction standpoint, it's very good, and I definitely feel like it helps a lot of people understand how to deck construct in the game, and it helps people on how to make a deck in general. Then the next pro that I have kind of sort of ties in with this are the TDs are worth buying, and some of the TDs are even part of the meta right now. Like the original 5 trial decks, which was like what, Nirvana, Snow Seraph, Magnolia, Bruce, and Bastion. Like they're all somewhere in the meta at this particular point. At the time of recording this video, that is. So, and it makes it worth, investing in these particular trial decks, which that's what I like about it too. It's all like, if you like the trial decks and you want like an easy way to get into, $5, that's all it takes. Sometimes it's a little bit higher than 5 depending on what store you get to, because sometimes the MSR, but that's like the main MSRP is like it's $5, and they constantly reprint the trial decks too. Like that was another thing that like Bushiroad said they're going to do. They're going to constantly redo the trial decks so that they never lose that price tag, because if there's anything that happened in the last 2 like versions of Vanguard, we've always had that one trial deck that was always like, it was cheap, and then it eventually becomes stupidly expensive because over time they no longer have that product in place. So of course, it raises up in price, which is understandable sometimes. But I do like the fact that even though the trial decks are worth $5, you're still getting your money's worth. Because even if like a person, like let's say they're not really feeling Vanguard or they're not really feeling the game at all, it's only $5. You're not really wasting that much. And a lot of the decks in the game are pretty cheap too, like an overdress format that is. So that's another good thing that I definitely like about it. If you like that particular thing, you can continue building up on it. Like for a prime example, like I bought the Nirvana deck for a prime example, and I didn't really like Nirvana that much, so I didn't really continue on building Nirvana. And it's like what, $5 that I lost off of that. But I did try to build like the other chick. I cannot pronounce her name, so I'm not going to. But you already know, like the Sword and Shield chick. You know, she actually looks pretty interesting to build, so I am going to try to build that deck up more, which is something that I'm looking forward to. And then last but not least, another pro that I feel like Overdress has is almost everything will get support. Um, the thing that was the issue with Vanguard was always the support system. They will always give like one particular clan like major support, and then there will be clans that sometimes even in like a year span would never really get support like that. Like I've complained about this a lot. Like I remember there were times where like Megacolony didn't get support at all for like a whole year. And I'll be all like, why the fuck are they not giving Megacolony support when it desperately needs it? Oh, but we get some more Gear Chronicles support. Like I've been preaching on that shit for fucking years, my guy. So the fact that they're actually trying that, the fact that like every single nation will at least get some type of support, like they, like for a prime example, like I play Stoicheia, so it's like, yo, maybe Magnolia may not get support in this set, but Zorga, Flagberg, and now we got Ronin. I think that's how you Rowan. I think that's how you say like the new one name. Like those are gonna get support some way somehow. So even though my Magnolia deck might not get support, maybe Zorga might get support. So I can like build on Zorga, or you know Flagberg might get support, so I can build on Flagberg, and etc. 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 You know, stuff like that always happens. So that's why I was all like, the support system is pretty well, because even if you're like dedicated to one nation, like you're definitely going to get support within that system. But with all that being said, let's actually talk about the cons of Overdress. And one of the things that I mentioned when I talked about it was beginner friendly was the ride line and all this other stuff. I honestly feel like the biggest con, in my personal opinion, when it comes to Overdress is it's too simplified. Now, this is kind of sort of nitpicking in my personal opinion for this particular reason. I think it depends on when you started Vanguard and how long you start, and how long you play Vanguard. I feel like that when it comes to Vanguard veterans, it's kind of hard to really like play Overdress because you're so used to how Vanguard used to play. It's kind of hard to you know, convert into that unless you have like an open mindset. Like I had an open mindset about this too, because even when Overdress first started, I didn't get into Overdress immediately. I think I waited like maybe a couple of sets in before actually fully diving into Overdress, because I was like, nah man, I want to stick with premium format, I want to stick with V premium and all this other stuff like that. I don't really want to play Overdress like that. I actually finally decided to play Overdress, like I think after 2 or 3 months when the game finally, when like the second reboot finally came out, and I was like, okay, it's not super bad. The deck that I want to play isn't really that good, because like at that time Magnolia really wasn't that good. So I was like, yeah, despite Magnolia not being like the best, I'm still like try it out and all this other stuff like that. But it's, you know, it grows on you. Like now there's like a bunch of decks that I now want to play. Like now I want to play the Fox chick from Dragon Empire, in the non-Stoicheia deck that I actually like playing is Gradivia, aka what I call Space Mommy Dami and stuff like that. So I like playing with Space Mommy Dami and whatnot. Like especially when she first was announced, I was like, yo, I'm playing this. I never built Brantgate, but I'm gonna play this shit. So, but like overall, like when you compare like how Overdress plays compared to like how premium format plays, or like sometimes even V premium, it feels too simplified. And like I mentioned before, Vanguard was already a simple game to play. I understand why they made it a little bit more simple, but I feel like that they simplified it too much. And again, I feel like it also depends on how long somebody's played Vanguard, if they see it in this particular way. Um, but like I said, it's not like the worst thing, but like it is kind of like like I said, it depends on how long you played. And when I say Vanguard veteran, like just to clarify, when I say Vanguard veteran, I mean anybody who has played Vanguard during retro era or G era. I don't really consider people who played during V series Vanguard veterans, and the reason why I choose the other two that are veterans is because they went through both reboots. They went through like every single change, almost every single change of like what Vanguard did. So it's understandable to consider them veterans and not the people who's played V, despite V being around for about 3 years and whatnot. No offense to you V series players. Last but not least, I feel like the other biggest con is definitely the overtriggers. Nobody likes this shit. I even like, you know what? When I was thinking about making this video, I was like, yo, I don't know what's worse, Zarzan or the overtriggers. So I literally like went to Vanguardians and I asked a bunch of people. I was like, yo, what do you think people hated the most, of Zarzan or the overtriggers? And despite that there were a few people who did say Zarzan, a mass majority of people who responded did not like the overtriggers whatsoever. So I was like, yo, fuck. Okay, I guess the overtriggers are the worst thing that ever happened in the game. I still believe that Zarzan kind of sort of was, because like at least the overtriggers, they have some people defending it. I don't remember a single soul defending Zarzan. And then I remember even at that one point, if I remember correctly, I think don't quote me on this, I think that it was like I forgot like who made the mat, but somebody made a mat and it was basically a bunch of Zarzans getting burned to death. I remember the hate was that strong. So I was all like, I think people hated Zarzan more though, but I was fucking wrong. People don't like the overtriggers. And that's for a good reason. The overtriggers is a mechanic that basically wins games when you in the way that you don't want to win the game. Like when you look at this from a defensive standpoint, I think the overtriggers are somewhat decent. Like as far as defensive overtriggers go, that's as far as I would ever defend it. But everything else about the overtriggers, when it comes to the effects of the overtriggers, when it comes to the additional effect to the overtrigger, when it comes to the overtrigger being 100 million, fuck that shit. That shit is trash. That shit needs to go. I'm not even gonna lie. But I don't think you will ever see overtriggers leave overdress. And here's the reason why. The overtriggers are basically the identity of the overdress. Yes, you have the nations that work. Yes, you have the right line, that's a thing. But they're not the identity to overdress. The overtriggers are the identity to overdress. And getting rid of the overtriggers in overdress is basically... you're basically taking away the identity of the format in general. And I know like some people don't really want to hear this, especially people who want the overtriggers gone. I know for a fact that they don't really want to hear that though, but it's actually pretty true when you really think about it. Because what did V series had? V series had the gift markers. When you look at the gift marker system, the first thing you think about is the V series. When you look at premium format, or Vanguard G in particular, they have strides. When you think of strides, you think of Vanguard G. That's the identity of Vanguard G. And then like so forth and so forth when it comes to retro. You know, season 4 was Legion, you know, Legion. You had Legion era, you had Break Ride era, you had Limit Break era, you had Mega Blast era. You know, they all have their identities based on their particular mechanic. And with Overdress, it's the over triggers. Now, I can see the over triggers getting banned in premium format, but I don't think I could ever see the over triggers get banned in overdress. In my personal opinion, I definitely feel like that the over triggers definitely needs to get an errata, but I don't think they'll really get rid of the over triggers altogether. Last but not least, and I feel like that this was pretty much one of the greatest sins, but at the same time, I would say, I will warn everybody now, take this with a grain of salt. I feel like that the other con for overdress is the anime. Now, I stopped watching the anime because it started getting like uninterested to me, in my personal opinion. Even though like, nah, actually no, I was about to defend that shit for a second. Nah, I at first I was like, yo, this is actually gonna be pretty fire because Clam Studio is making it. Clam Studio is a legend. And I was like, yo, this is going to be actually pretty good. The characters look interesting. I like the character designs and all that other stuff. But, like, the issue that I have with the anime is something that I have noticed from a lot of people who played Vanguard in the past. The anime doesn't teach you about the card game. Hell, if I remember correctly, I think there was a lot of people who said that from like updates that I heard here and there, that the anime does hardly plays card games at all. And I was like, it's a card game anime though. Why the fuck are they doing that? But like the first 5 episodes of the original Vanguard teaches you how to play the card game. That's how I learned. Well, a few with some other tutorials made by my friend the Collector. Like that's basically how I learned the game, was through the anime. That's one of the things that I like the most about the anime. It felt like a card game anime. It had like some mystical shit here and there, don't get me wrong, but you know, they did some real life card game shit. You seen deck building process, you know, progress. You seen progress show up in the main character. You seen, you know, you seen the tournament play and all this other stuff. You seen the characters fail and try to improve on their craft and actually actually go to like, you know, they always go to that beach house and whatnot to learn how to like improve on their craft. They have like sessions and stuff like that on how to play the card game. None of that is there in Overdress. And it's like, they took away one of the best things about the anime, and that's why I said that that is a major con to Overdress. And I honestly feel like that if it still kept that formula of at least teaching people how to play the fucking card game, instead of going to their official YouTube channel to learn how to play their card game, it would have been 10 times better. But no, they decided to do a bunch of nonsense for no apparent reason. But with all that being said, let's actually go on to V Premium. Now I'm gonna be real with you. V Premium don't really have any pros to it. I'm gonna just be real. Reason being is because a lot of the stuff goes on to the cons. But to be nice, I'll give out 2 particular pros that I can see in V Premium. The first one is this is where the clan collection comes out. This is where we're getting constant support, and the clan collection comes out 2 times a year, which is another thing that I like about it. It's indirect support for premium format, which is actually something that I do like about V Premium. And despite that I do believe that V Premium needs a major upgrade, I do like the fact that there are some cards that needs to get reprinted that comes up in this set, and at the same time we still get some fresh new material that is actually pretty good for both formats. The second pro that I will give is that there are some premiums, there's some decks in V Premium that works in that particular format but would never work in premium format. I'll give you a prime example. as a person who plays Great Nature. I can play Hamsuke's in premium format. I can play Chatnor in premium format. I can play Big Belly in premium format. I can play Leopold in premium format. But you know what deck I cannot play in premium format? Polaris. Reason being, Polaris has an ability that allows you to restand the Vanguard, restand him as a Vanguard, as long as you have a rear guard that gives you 70k, that has 70k or more attack power. The issue with this is that despite that it's not an impossible thing to do, it's literally, you are literally basing your whole deck around trying to restand Polaris. In premium format could kind of sort of work around that, but there's no point. There's no point of playing this deck in premium format because there's no older support cards that supports Polaris indirectly, and then at the same time there's nothing that you can really do in order to improve his gameplay altogether. And so, like, at the same time, you also got to remember that despite that this is a restanding Vanguard, Great Nature, as far as as far as like underrated decks go and underrated clans, has one of the best G zones in the game. It's all like they have a G zone good enough for you not to not to pass up, trying to not stride. You should be striding every turn in fucking Great Nature because the strides are that good. They were actually blessed with a good G zone. They were blessed with good strides and everything else like that. That's the reason why Big Belly sees so much play, because a lot of the older support cards can actually support Big Belly in his in-phase skill, where everything that gets retired by a card effect allows you to draw a card actually comes in clutch. So it's like, yo, Big Belly is actually pretty good in premium format, way better than his V premium format version. But you can never play Polaris in premium format because he works better in V premium. His deck was solely designed for that format. But with all that being said, let's talk about the one and only con about V premium. Everything, and I mean almost everything, that V premium can do, premium format can do better. And that is the major con of V premium, in my personal opinion, is there's nothing that separates it from premium format. It's that daunting, no pun intended. Like, my thing is this, like, if I was to build, like, let's say, like, Beast Deity, right? If I was to build Beast Deity, there will be, like, despite that V premium Beast Deity is actually pretty fire, there's a bunch of stuff in premium format Beast Deity that makes it 10 times better. They have their own stride. Some of the strides work 10 times better. I'm guaranteed a lot more restands and all this other stuff. I mean, I can restand a lot more and a lot more efficiently in premium format Beast Deities than I will be in V premium Beast Deities altogether. So that would be the reason why I would actually choose premium format over V premium. And on top of that, you also have the fact that V premium has nothing to its name that makes it stand out, which is something that I will get back to later on in the video. But with all that being said, since I don't really have too much else to talk about V premium, let's go over the premium format. Now they have a lot of pros, but they also have just the same amount of cons. The best pro about premium format is, like I mentioned, it can do almost everything V premium cannot do. It has better defensive option. It has extended combos. It has amplified strategies. It has a bigger card pool. Premium format is Vanguard at its rawest and fullest potential. No ands or buts about it. It is at its rawest and its fullest potential. when you really think about it. That is the thing I like about premium format the most, is that especially how it utilizes the overdressed card pool as well, because like there were even certain clans that got 10 times better because of the overdressed card pool. Looking at Megacolony, where Megacolony didn't originally have a decent main deck though, but thanks to the overdress, thanks to the Stoicheia support, it got 10 times better, which is something that I definitely like about it, especially me as a Megacolony main, as a person who uses that as a flagship. I definitely like the most about it. There's other clans that it definitely did that too as well, but that's like the best thing I can come up with at the moment. But you get what I'm saying, you know, it has, you know, the bigger card pool makes everything better. Like I mentioned in, it's like I mentioned when I was talking about Great Nature. Oh, now you got access to Strides. Now you got access to Cran Tiger. Now you got access to the older Big Belly support that can actually help Big Belly, you know, strive in his own support, you know, and all this other stuff. I like that. You got G Guardians now, where now when you go against decks that forces you to call more than one card from hand due to guard restriction, oh, let me just slap a G, you know, let me just use my G Guardian to like defend all that. You know, now instead of restanding like 3 or 4 times like with, you know, Beast Deity, now you can restand 9 or 10 times. I know that's maybe a little bit over exaggerating, but it's the truth right there. You know, basically, like I mentioned, it's Vanguard in its rawest form. And there's a lot more, you know, and there's a lot more diversity in ways to play. Now you actually have access to instant win conditions. Like for a prime example, you know, as much as I hate Gize, I have to put Gize up there. You know, then there's also you know, there's what else is there? I forgot what his name was from Gear Chronicle, but you know what I mean. The whole you know, the Zodiac Time Beast people. You know, I forgot exactly what the name of that win condition was though, but because it's been so long. But you have access to that. You have access to the Deleter's win condition. You have access to the Glendios win. Well, actually, we're supposed to be getting Glendios on Tuesday in V Premium, so maybe I shouldn't say that right now. But for now, we got the Glendios win condition. Oh my god, man. Access to the overdress support is also another thing, like I mentioned before. So it's like overall, like the access to the bigger card pool, the access to more options, the access to more combos, and the access to better strategies is what makes a premium format, you know, the best format in the game. And then especially the way that we fixed everything in the October 2021 ban list, where everything at first was like super broken. Now we have like maybe 1 or 2 broken things, and everything was more playable. I remember specifically a lot of people who didn't like premium format at first actually wanted to play premium format after that ban list. That ban list was that legendary. But let's actually talk about the cons. The biggest con, in my personal opinion, is the secondary market. The secondary market is basically toxic. It's very toxic. And because Bushiroad doesn't do reprints often, you basically see cards that shouldn't be high in price. You see cards that originally wasn't high in price now becomes high in price. And of course, you could just say this is card game adequate, because this always happens in every single card game. There's always a thing where like everything is, you know, where the secondary market plays a huge role in how a card game market is. I even remember when Digimon first came out, it was so hard trying to get into that game. I was like, yo, I'm gonna give it 9 months. A whole 9 months. If the secondary market doesn't clear up by then, I'm not touching the game. But now you look at the Digimon secondary market, it's not that bad. It could be better, but it's not that bad. It's not as bad as it should be. Of course, they need to start making reprints though, but that's for a whole nother video. That's for a whole nother topic. But anyway, overall, that's basically like the thing that's the problem with Vanguard. I even remember like there was a Tachikaze player who topped with Ancient Dragon where he just used like when he just used like a spindle driver and whatnot as like the only grade 3. But in that deck he used Tyrannobite, which is like a grade 2 that prior to that list, the grade 2 was about like it was like 50 cents to $1, maybe $2 tops. But after he topped with that deck and made like top 4 in that particular tournament, all of a sudden people started buying out Tyrannobites, and it got up to a point where he was almost a $30 card. He jumped from 50 cents to $1 to almost a $30 card just because of how old that is. And that's where the double-edged sword comes up with this card pool. You know, despite it having a larger card pool, a lot of older cards are subjective to actually getting up in price. Now, of course, Tyrannobite, he's no longer $30. I think he went back down to like 5 or 10. I have to look at it again, like if I remember correctly. But outside of that, he's still high up in price. Like even like when they announced that they were making War Deity like a Shurikaiser, like the original War Deity is almost at $30 right now. Because like now all of a sudden, you know, anybody who was like looking into buying a Shurikaiser is now looking into like trying to buy that particular stride. So that's something that is very interesting about like the secondary market on premium format. And because of it, it's right now the most expensive format because it's very difficult to get your hands on certain cards. It's very difficult for somebody to it's very difficult for somebody to try to build a deck, especially when it comes to the stride zone. Like strides hardly ever get reprinted, but I will also have to slightly come in defense of the strides as well. We do have cheaper strides, even though they're not really that good. We still have cheaper variants of strides. And then you also got to remember that to justify buying some of the more expensive strides, you basically only go into one or two when you really think about it. Like, I mean, a prime example is like me using Megacolony. Like, I think I rarely go into any other stride outside of Overwhelm and Gridora. Like, I go into Overwhelm, I go into Gridora, I have Optorandus in the deck, but I haven't went into Optorandus in years. Like, post Gridora, I haven't went into Optorandus since post Gridora. And then at the same time, you also have the GB8, which is still pretty good, but I go into that like every once in a blue moon. So it's like, you don't really have to buy every single expensive stride that the clan has to offer. I think you just mainly buy the main strides and use everything else for flip fodder when you really think about it. So you could kind of play around that, but you're like on thin ice with it when you really think about it, because it also varies with clans, because sometimes you definitely need those options to go into those every once in a blue moon situations, but still. But anyway, that's just a major con in my personal opinion. There's of course the card pool as well. Another thing to add on to it is that some of the other mechanics are no longer being used. Like, we don't see Legion being used, we don't see Break Ride being used that often, we don't see Limit Break being used that often, and we damn for sure don't really see Mega Blast being used that often. And it's like, it's mainly because the game got too fast for those particular mechanics, and there's way better cards to use than those particular mechanics. I personally think that there should be a retro format where like they at least make legions like playable, because like, let's be real, we never really got a decent chance to play with like legions and whatnot, like especially anybody who's played English format. But outside of that, man, honestly, overall, to what I have to say to all this is, premium format has a lot of issues when it comes to its card pool, when it comes to secondary market, because while the card pool is great, if you are the type of person who hasn't played during that particular area and had all of those older cards, you kind of sort of get into this little pickle. And then of course, last but not least, once again, the over triggers is a huge issue. It's even a bigger issue in premium format because there's certain clans that can actually there's actually certain clans that can actually amplify using over triggers to like a worse extent than you will ever see in overdress. Like for a prime example, look at Genesis or OTT, where they're able to stack that shit, or look at something like Neo Nectar, where they're able to put it back into the deck. Or there's like a few other clans that can also put the over triggers back into the deck too. But like, outside of that, man, the over triggers does cause a huge issue at times. So that's something that I definitely don't like about premium format. But like I said, if they ban over triggers, I can definitely see it in premium format way more than I can see it in overdress. So overall, now that I'm done with this long ass review, is there any way to fix all of the cons to all three formats? I don't think that there's really much you can do in overdress. Matter of fact, so far, the only change that overdress had, like outside of ban list wise, is having the limitation of how many critical triggers, front triggers, and draw triggers you can have in a deck. But outside of that, we haven't really seen a card that needs to be like that has a super demand of getting hit or anything else like that. Or we don't have like a lot of cards in overdress that guarantees the hit, so it's kind of a safe format for right now, again, at the time of recording this video. For V Premium, I feel like that the first step of actually fixing V Premium is having a mechanic that cannot be used in premium format. Having a mechanic that cannot be used in overdress format. It needs its own mechanic. Like for a prime example, overdress, you can use ride lines, but you cannot use ride lines in V Premium, and you cannot use ride lines in premium format. Premium format, you have strides, you have legion, you have limit break, you have break ride, you have mega blast. They can all be used in premium format, but they cannot be used in V Premium, and they cannot be used in overdress format. But what does V Premium have? Everything that can be used in V Premium has full blown access in premium format, and premium format definitely knows how to capitalize on that shit. So that's why I was all like, V Premium needs a new mechanic, but the mechanic should only be allowed to be used in V Premium. That would give at least people a reason to play V Premium. Because right now, there is outside of financial wise, there's literally no reason to play V Premium. At this particular moment, there's no reason. So that's all like, I feel like that's the biggest con. The biggest con that V Premium has, the first step to fixing it, is definitely have a mechanic that only works in there. Premium format, however, as much as I would like to say try to fix the secondary market, that is impossible. Unless Bushiroad comes with back-to-back, reprint support and whatnot, there's no way in hell they gonna fix the secondary market. The secondary market is the wild, wild west. There's no way they can really fix that whatsoever. So I don't think that they can really fix their cons. What I can say is that when it comes to carpool wise, I hope that at some particular point we have something in another reason to actually use Legion, or we have a reason to use brake rides or anything else like that, but we don't. So those are dead mechanics. But with all that being said, that's basically how I viewed the state of Vanguard. Overall, they had a pretty good first year. We've seen a lot of fixes. We've seen more fixes within this 1 year than we've seen the entire time that Vanguard existed, especially when you look at it from the first reboot. So Vanguard at the moment is on the right track. It's not on the best track. Don't get me wrong, it's not on the best track, but it's on the right track so far. But with all that being said, I'm going to end this video here because I've been talking for way too long. But for now, my name is Mrs. Zoo Nation, aka Savage Armor June Giraffe. This has been the Megacolony Trap House Podcast.